Okay, for my class, we'll go ahead and get started. And I did start a live stream. The point of this is if you want to kind of code along and tie into your own Mongo database with my kind of the demo project that I've been doing, you guys can do that. So let me get you a URL to a stream, and you can either watch live, or you can watch the stream, or you can watch in the future if you really want to ignore me today. I'm not going to say that's a good idea. I wouldn't say that's a good idea, but nonetheless, you ultimately have that option. So the live stream is said to code a better auth authentication into a MERN stack app, and so that's what we're doing. Better Auth came out somewhere in 2025, and I liked the tool based on what I was reading about, and I brought it in, and I've liked working with it. So kind of introduced Better Auth yesterday. By the way, if you guys have questions, feel free to just voice your voice in, type it in the Discord, whatever you want to do. Or in the live stream, I guess, even though it's kind of hard to keep an eye on all places. As my class would know, I've got this MERN stack app that I've been using as a demo project. And you can clone this. So if you are following along, you can copy the URL and clone this locally onto your computer using whatever tool of your choice, and then you'll be looking at this folder with the exception of the .env file that you can code with, and then you can right click and open that in VS Code. And that's the starting point. Now, the exercise today is, instead of building our own login system, which you can kind of see, that's something that I started to teach to do. And I have this getting all my users, or adding a new user, or logging in a user, getting a user by ID, deleting a user by ID. And all of this is in the users module. But we're not using that anymore. Instead of using that users module, we're going to use Better Auth. So I'm just going to comment out my users as a starting point, and install Better Auth with the npm command. If I go to installation, npm install Better Auth, or npm I better-auth in the terminal. And while that's installing, I got to make sure that I don't have any node applications running on my Windows services. I always like to make sure that these are all shut down. So I just kind of search for node just to make sure that I don't have any node services running. And I do. If I just type in node, that pops up. So let me end those tasks. Okay. All right. So just want to, as I did yesterday, I'm able to follow the installation docs to a point, and there's definitely a point where it doesn't work. So here's two new variables for my .env. My better auth secret, which I can generate a random secret, copy that. So I'm going to copy that line into my .env. Of course, I'm going to do that off screen. By the way, I've got 4 variables so far. That would be the 5th variable. So I have a port variable, a debug variable, a Mongo connection string variable, and a database variable. So I've got 4 variables in my .env. Before, I just added my 5th variable. And then setting the base URL, which this is exactly correct, but I'm running on 8080. So I'm going to copy this new variable in. And instead of 3000, it's going to be 8080. So paste that line in, change localhost to 8080, save that and close that and bring that back. So I added 2 new variables to my .env. Because this is live on the internet, I have to kind of make that a little hidden. For those security purposes. Next up, create an auth.ts or .js if you're just in vanilla JavaScript. And I created it in the project root. So if I just kind of close, and zoom in a little bit. Get this a little bit more friendly. Auth, getting this in the right place. Right click, new file, auth.js, and that's not a subfolder of anything. It's in here in the root. And the first thing, and you can kind of, again, continue importing better auth from better auth. And then I start with an export constant. So this is like a default export. So export the variable auth. Except for it doesn't say default, so you can kind of start with that. And that way we are exporting one variable here. Check in on my class. Now, yesterday, inside of database.js, let me have all these functions for users. Function for pinging, function for connecting to the database. We got a database variable. I added a new variable called _client, and I needed to make basically these 2 variables accessible. So I make an accessor method to access _db and _client. And so there are 2 new methods in this file to access those variables. One called getClient that returns _client. One called getDatabase returns the function connectToDatabase. ConnectToDatabase returns _db. So then you add those to your named exports. Get client and get database are now exported out of this database module. Therefore, back inside of Auth, I can now import get client and get database from, we're in the same folder, database and Auth are in the same folder, so root directory database.js, and then I make a client and a DB variable, also that we can configure better Auth to work with our Mongo database. So we added in this chunk right here. Don't forget your here, comma. Okay, so now we've got better Auth kind of hooked up to our Mongo database. Here is something new. And this is because we have to get this to trust our front end. Right now, our front end and our back end, I mean, they're different applications. And so if I run the back end, it runs on a different port than our front end. And so even though they're in the same folder structure, our front end is in the same folder as our back end, they are separate applications. I mean, again, you can run them both at the same time, and you'll see they run on different ports. So we have to give a little bit of code here. This is something that was not here yesterday. So again, we're on the back end here, and we're saying that yes, our back end is running at the better auth URL, which that was a variable that we created, which was localhost 8080. So that's really nothing too exciting. But this trusted origins, right, says, hey, the backend should trust localhost 5173, 3000, and as well as the G-Cloud service. Now, if I just cd front end and just show npm run dev, whoops, typo, npm run dev, just to show the port is 5173. So this one right here gets our backend to trust our front end for better auth. So this was not something we had to do yesterday. Also, obviously, we're giving it the live URL. Localhost is on your local computer. This is when you're deployed. So this URL is the live URL where my app is located. So that's email and password to true was the next thing that we configured. So after our database, we said, hey, we're logging in with emails and passwords. We configured our sessions to be 1 hour. So our cookies are going to last for 1 hour. And I defined some custom user attributes. So in addition to an email and a password, we'll have a role field, which will be an array. An array is an object. I said that yesterday. So MongoDB stores arrays as objects. A profile object, a created at, which actually I think you get that for free. I think you get created at for free without bringing that in. I'll take that off. I think you get that for free. Okay. So there we go. We're exporting Auth. We kind of have this guy configured to work with our MongoDB. Some basic fields. And now we switch over to our Express app. And we kind of have this app.use cores. I configured cores with a little bit more specificity. So inside of this app.use cores, again, this is our backend Express server. Clean that there, put this on another line. Again, trust the front end, 5173, and trust it from the deployed URL. And credentials is true. So again, this just prevents, when you have separate apps, a very common error that you get is when these apps don't trust each other out of the box, and it's called cross-origin scripting cores. And so you basically have to say, hey, you know, trust the front end. The front end runs at 5173, or you might find it at this service URL that's running on the cloud. Let's go ahead and import Auth. And this is a named export. And I said it was a default export, but then I realized that it didn't have the keyword default, so it's not a default export, it's just a named export. Therefore, you bring it in with the curlies, the destructuring of an object. We also bring in this toNode handler. And that allows us to wire up all of the endpoints for Auth. And I said this yesterday. I'm going to look up what this splat means, because I do not know. And I don't know that ChatGPT will know. Frankly, it's a new tool. And so LLMs are really good at certain things, but working with current information, like brand new tools, LLMs are not always the greatest. So let me see. Oh. Let me at least try to figure out what that splat. I have no idea. I said it yesterday, and I said I want to look into it. I like to know what every line is, of course. It's a wild card. Is a wildcard parameter used by Better Auth routing system. Star is a wildcard that matches any path segments. Splat is the parameter name. It could be any name, like path or route. This means the route will match all requests that start with API auth, followed by anything. So all requests that start with API auth will be handled by Better Auth. So that's just a variable name. It could be anything. Splat could be anything. So the little comment to throw on that. All requests that start with API auth will be handled by Better Auth. Splat is a variable that matches anything after. Okay. It's just a funny word to put at the end of a wild card star. Okay, now I got this front end running. Let me kind of close this, Control C in the terminal. Let me go back, cd ... And let me think about what I've forgotten. So, kind of got the database set up. We got email and password. And so this is when we're actually getting into the front end to create, you could see here, better auth in React. So once we get into actually React, we'll look at it from there. But I think at this point, let's just run the back end, unless I'm forgetting something, which is possible and probable. See if we boot up here. Okay, it does not like MongoDB adapter, and I thought that was installed. So I got MongoDB. I got better auth. Oh, you know what? I did not. There's one more import. I forgot. I got to import MongoDB adapter. There we go. MongoDB adapter. There we go. Now we're booting up. Okay, so the comments I'm just going to remove. And just temporarily I'll put these other comments in here. So I'm going to use get session today. I have not used get session yesterday, but I should be able to register, log in, and log out and get session. Now that I have that configured, 8080. So here's 8080/API auth sign up email. So there's the sign up email. This is the registration. This is what we did yesterday. I'll do another EA Gudmestad 12 and send that over, see what breaks. Okay, EA Gudmestad went in. I was given an ID, a user ID. I should be given a cookie. So I have a cookie here. I've got one cookie. Which we're going to leverage that cookie to make sure that our user is logged in to give them access to the routes. If I boot up my database, just to show EA Gudmestad 12 is in there. Go ahead and connect in. This was Lawn Connect. Okay, this users table, this users collection now is essentially useless. That's my old self-built. But now under user, and I've got a few users in here already because I've been testing it, but here's my profile, Evan Gudmestad. I automatically get a created at. It's interesting that I have a bunch of sessions, but nonetheless, I've got my new user, EA Gudmestead 12, and he does have a cookie. So that's good. Let me... I'm going to pull up the lab. And so for my class, once you have a login system, as we do, I guess I should test the other functions. So there's sign up. And if I sign out, again, right now I still have that cookie. So if I sign out, the cookie should go away. There you go, 0 cookies when you sign out. And when I log back in, which, by the way, I very often would start with this form encoded. Yesterday, Brody had this issue where literally the same data from here to here, same data, but it would only work inside of this raw JSON, sending it this way. So I think I'm going to start just moving to this raw JSON as far as sending that across. EA Gudmestead 12, and my password was 1 through 9. If I go to log back in, I'm not being redirected anywhere. And the cookie is back. I may have some figuring out to do here because this cookie says it expires Tuesday, the 28th of October, in 1 week, and I wanted it to expire in 1 hour. So I don't love that the expiration is what it is on that cookie. So that might be something that is something for me to look into, because I thought that I changed this to 60 seconds times 60 minutes. 60 times 60 is 1 hour. Maybe that's not how that's working. But I have tested those routes. Now what I was getting to is I was going to lock down, to kind of get ahead to the authentication lab. And again, I'm going to have to refactor this, but users can register accounts for themselves. You can log in with their email and password. Users can change their own password, something to figure out. Passwords are hashed, that already takes care of that. We are tracking their session, so we don't need JWT, so we won't be doing that. We won't be using that dependency anymore. So again, a lot of this is going to be refactored, but only logged in users may access the API. So that is something that is going to stay in this lab. And also, tracking edits is something else I haven't taught yet. So these are two things that I need to kind of bring forward, and I'd like to show this one. And so this makes sense, right? We got a lot of endpoints, and essentially doesn't matter to the endpoint. You probably want to make sure that a user can't use Postman to just access your data via an endpoint if they're not logged in. They got to be a user in the system with permissions. And so at this point, we don't have permissions, but we do have users, and so only logged in users. So this is a perfect case for middleware, right? Middleware is just something you could put on a route, and you put it in a method one time, and then you just use that method over and over and over. And it's nice and simple. You don't, if you find yourself repeating the same logic inside of a bunch of different routes, obviously that's the case where you want to keep your code dry. Do not repeat yourself. That's a classic example of where you should take the logic out of the route and put it into a method, and in this case a middleware method that can be called before the route is called. So we have a middleware folder where we have a couple of middleware functions that we used joy validation, and we used Mongo ID, valid object ID. So these are a couple middleware functions that we've written. So we're going to write another middleware function. We'll call this is authenticated. I'm going to bring in auth. And we need a path up a directory, .. slash. Now I'm in middleware, so if I just go up one directory, I believe that's where auth.js is, but we got to put it in quotes. And there's auth. So that should be the correct relative pathing to go up a directory and find the auth. Export async function is authenticated, and as middleware does, rec res next try catch. And I'll refactor that catch. Okay, so kind of put this one in here, get session, API auth get session. So we already tested those three routes, but here's one to get session information. Actually, this is called get session. This is going to be a little bit different. So auth.api get session, and we're reading this from the HTTP headers. Now, so if there's no session, we return a 401, which is a client-side error code that says you must be logged in. Okay, so if you're not logged in, this is what will come back. if we make it to here, we know we're logged in. So remember that middleware can attach data to the request object. So we can add a property, rec.user, and a rec.session equals session.session. So these are new variables that will be created on our request object. And we'll be able to test this. And if anything, any exception happens here, return res status 401. Basically the same error message. I could also say invalid or expired session, basically the same thing. Okay, now what's the state of this app was that I was hitting the database for my users, but if you actually dive into my different endpoints, I didn't get very far into refactoring this away from arrays. So if I go to my routes, like look at my jobs, I'm still like in an array of jobs. It's not super important because if I were to hit this get all jobs, right? If I get all the jobs, which is just returning my array of jobs, I can still add the middleware here to test if that middleware is working. So I still have to be logged in even to access the data out of this dummy array, so I could still test it, is kind of what I'm getting at. So over here in job, I can import is authenticated. And let me double check the pathing here because probably no good. So I'm in job, so I got to go up to down one. Is authenticated, that actually looks right. Is authenticated, then I can throw is authenticated right here. So if I'm not logged in, I'm going to get that error. If I am logged in, I should get John Doe and Jane Smith coming back. Ooh, I got a question. Courtney, thank you. Try 60 times 60 times 1000 for 1 hour on the cookie. It's showing 1 hour when I test mine on Postman. Cool. It's the beauty of having people as you're going. Thank you for that. And let me go back to Auth and try, maybe that's an hour? Okay. All right, so so if I log in right now, let's just see, I look like I'm logged in. If I log out, success is true, so I'm not logged in, no cookies. Log back in, send it over, I'm logged in, and I got a cookie, a session token. Okay. Now if I go back to my get all jobs, localhost 8080 API jobs, I might have refactored this path. Localhost 8080 API jobs. It clearly is spinning. And let me see what's up here. API jobs. That's never a good sign when it takes that long. But I would like it to stop now. Maybe I got a loop somewhere that's not. Just restarting my server. And okay, so connection reset. Sign out. So now I'm signed out. Let me try and be signed out and get it. Okay, now I get an error unauthorized. You must be logged in. So now I'm logged in and it spins. So one thing that I noticed is it's reading from rec.headers. And I'm just going to write a console log checking authentication middleware. Okay. So let's see if we can get into these console logs and do a little debugging here. Okay. Sign out. Here, permission lockdown, perfect. Log in, logged in, go back, and we're hanging. And it says session is null. Okay. Now, the second time, oh, session was null here. Second time I do have a session object. So this is right. And then I ran it again and this is right. So I have a session here that says session. The session, you can actually see, if you dig, I got a user, email. You can see my user information all inside of session, so that's correct. Oh, I forgot the next. Did you see it? How the keyword next, learning opportunity. The keyword next calls the next function in the middleware pipeline. Well, what's the next function is the endpoint. And so if I don't call next, it was hanging. And so I missed a very important keyword. Let me reboot. Control S. Rebooting my server. Sign out. Now that I'm signed in, right? So I am signed in, so I can access. If you clear the cookie this way, you see unauthorized, you must be logged in. So there's multiple ways. You can sign out manually by clearing the cookie, right? Just like an end user, they can clear their cookies in their browser. And now I'm logged in. You get access to the resource. Now I log out and I get blocked. Cool. Oh, one more thing. How long's the duration? Sign in, cookies, token. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing something different. Courtney, if yours is just 1 hour, I'm doing something different. Why my cookie is not logging me out for a week? Because I know that's what it's doing. I also want to point this out. in this middleware from this headers. Your headers contain a session object. And I'm just going to point this out again. All your user information is stored in that session object, which is pretty awesome. Courtney says, mine had a different time zone, but after adjusting for that, it was still showing an hour in length. I'm not sure how I got maybe a time zone issue. Okay, so that was an important thing to show how to lock down the routes with the little piece of middleware called isAuthenticated. Don't forget your next function call. 1 second, I'm going to throw away my gum. Okay. All right. On the front end, we got the back end running on 8080. You can open up a new terminal. So let's click new terminal window, and PowerShell is fine. CD front end. Okay, so now I've got the front end running. I'm going to run the front end on a separate terminal window than my back end. Back end's running on 8080. I'm getting ready to run the front end. But let's install Better Auth on the front end. So let me kind of minimize the things here to kind of simplify that view. Here is my React app. And I'm just going to show just enough on how to what did I do? npm I Better Auth. I remember what I did. Okay, so install Better Auth on the front end. Like the docs show, going back to the docs, in React we need an Auth client. So I put this Auth client in the source directory. I know you guys are interested in this, how to actually tie in the front end. So go in source, add a file, authclient.js. I think I copied and pasted that. Copy, paste that. 8080. All right, so now we're getting Better Auth on the front end. Here's our main JSX that calls app. I made a login component, so if I kind of close that down, I made a new component called loginpage.jsx. So inside of source, login page JSX. Okay, so a couple things here, some imports up at the top. Remember, use state is basically for our variables. Auth client from our from the export we just made. Okay, so then we do export default function login page. And we do some things here inside of a return. This is where we write our JSX. And so this is going to look a lot like HTML. Frankly, you know, I'm just going to copy and paste a chunk of JSX. And this is a login form, and so there's not enough time in the day. Okay, you make your login form. Here's my login form. Okay, so HTML, a little bit of JavaScript. We have to write that JavaScript. This is a handle submit function, so we have to write that. Const handle submit. It's an asynchronous function here. I've got a few variables for your email password and a show password. Here inside of my function, I prevent the default browser event submission. And when they click the submit button, I try auth client sign in email, passing in the email. So here's the magic, right? So here's auth client that we imported. So the magic is auth client sign in email, passing email and password, storing that in the res object. And in the event that it's successful, we get this message in the console, login successful with the res object. Otherwise, we catch an error. We'll just say login failed. And then I wrote this a little bit differently. Okay. So this is your submit event handler that calls the sign-in email. And then here in main JSX, instead of calling the app, we just call the login page component instead of calling app. So we import login page from here. Let me go back, main JSX, that syntax is correct. We're no longer using app. Now my landing page should be this login page. And because this was built with Vite, and anytime you go to with Vite, you basically bundle everything together with a build script. So we need to run that build script. And so that build script, npm run build, npm run build. Okay, so that kind of retransforms everything and rebundles everything for your Vite front end, or for your React front end. If I do npm run dev script, let's see what breaks. Okay, so here's my sign-in form. If I go to my console, and if I pass in something bad, if I just say 1, 2, 3, 4, obviously this is not a good username and password. I do get the 401 unauthorized. Localhost 8080 API auth sign in email. Clearly I get the error, so that's good. Even though that says login successful, that is a console log error. Let me go back to that because clearly I do have an error, invalid email or password, so that's good. Login page, line 13. Well, this is what I more or less I would expect that. Let me throw in a good username and password. EA Gudmestead 12 at Rankin with 1 through 9. Let me clear out that console. And I get a login successful with no errors. And there's my user ID. And I've got a login successful on the front end. Now you need to redirect the user and make this more useful. But I did bring it into the front end. I did show you how to successfully log in. Now if I clear that, let's go back. Clearly this doesn't work. I just need to refactor why it's in the world it says login successful. Because clearly we have an error. And we have this 401 unauthorized. So so here you might say if, so this is the res object that we're going to inspect the res object. It's got to write this better. So res dot error if res dot error, or actually we that's giving me some suggestions here. I don't know if that's what I want. If res.error, okay, so that's probably what I want. Autofill, you're killing me. Okay, so now I'm getting invalid email or password. That's more of what I would want. That is correct. And unauthorized 401, all of that is correct. Okay, so at a basic level, we got that. Now what? Let's build it one more time. Let's package it up. Package up the front end with Vite. npm run build. Let's go to our back end. Stop the back end on 8080. And there, BetterAuth is even giving us some errors on the back end, which is fine. And let's change our gcloud project ID. This is where everything, I think I'm pretty sure I tested this. Console. You know what? I couldn't have tested this until now. So let me get my project ID, and we're going to have a little bit of troubleshooting to do getting this live. I would anticipate gcloud set project ID. gcloud config set project, gcloud config set project, project ID. And now gcloud run deploy and then the service name, which is Lawn Connect service. Did a build, think it's ready to go. Lawn Connect MERN. All right, let's see what breaks in deployment. While that's going, I'm going to run to the restroom. Be right back. This always takes so long. So if I go back to my gcloud user requests, this is now going to be at a different path. So let's go to login, API auth sign in email. Okay. So I've got that refactored correctly. Okay. It appears the new deployment is out there. Let's control click and see what breaks. So clearly something's not happy. 404. Okay. And so, as always, G-Cloud breaks. Now it's having a hard time. This might be caching that's going on. Definitely have seen that before where it's caching an old path there. So let me see if I can use a different browser. Aha. Using a different browser, you don't have the caching. So if I were to clear my internet caching and cookies, that's an important thing. I think some of you guys have seen that caching issue. Nonetheless, my new front end is there. And if I sign in, I'm now signed in using the correct. So let me close the local host stuff, and we're going to if I post a new user, it's done this way. So let's go add user, API auth sign up email, and Gudmundsted 123. Let's send that across. Okay, so we can do those things. Let's check out under G-Cloud. Let's make a new folder. Make sure that middleware works. Never say for sure that it's going to work, but I feel good about this. This is a job request. Let's go to API jobs, and right now I've got two cookies, one on localhost and one on the live. So let's clear the live one, and let's go to get API jobs. We get unauthorized, and if I go to log back in and I go to get the jobs, we are cooking. And that's where I wanted to get today, guys. And so hopefully you found that helpful. I know several of you were intrigued on how to get this working on the front end. We have that. We have this working on the front end, and it is deployable to G-Cloud. The one thing that I find a little intriguing is I did not have to update my environment variables on the G-Cloud service with the new variables. It worked without that. It's a little interesting. And I got a little bug to figure out with the timing of the cookies. No big deal there. A little bit of digging and I can figure that out. Again, hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll go ahead and